2026. We're getting towards the end of the summer. And there are two themes on the tech front. On the one hand, as two of my VC friends from Silicon Valley suggested in an earlier show this week, Dave McClure and Aman Verjee, we're on the brink of a $7 trillion future when OpenAI and Anthropic go public. They're both forecasting that OpenAI, Anthropic, and SpaceX will be collectively worth about $7 trillion. So that's the good news, I guess, if you want to think in good and bad news. The bad news, at least in terms of Silicon Valley, is that AI isn't popular. Ed Luce had a piece in the Financial Times this week suggesting that AI phobia has become America's new consensus. And America's best historian, I think, Jill Lepore, had a weekend essay in the FT suggesting that AI versus the people will define the politics not just of 2026, but of 2028. So this division between the economic locomotive of AI and the resistance, the unpopularity of it is the theme of Keith Tear's We Are the Champions editorial for That Was the Week. And Keith, as always, is joining me from the center of innovation, perhaps the most unpopular place in America, Silicon Valley. Keith, would you agree that these two realities are kind of jarring? On the one hand, it's clear that the AI economy is remarkably successful and profitable. On the other hand, most Americans are increasingly suspicious of AI.
I think I don't agree, but I do agree that that's the zeitgeist. I think the zeitgeist exaggerates the negativity. I think, in fact, most intelligent people are now using AI from very young, high school onwards, and just don't talk about it. So the loudest voices are negative. And I fear for the Democrats that they're going to embrace that, assuming it's a populist rejection of AI, and end up handing the election to the Republicans.
But then what's the point of your editorial? You said, who are the, and this is about champions, AI champions, and we'll come to those. You say in the beginning of your editorial that you're concerned that the AI argument, I'm quoting you here, it's not the best English, the AI argument keeps arriving in negative form. So isn't that the problem, that people aren't making the best argument for AI? Or is that what, that seems to be what you're saying in your editorial?
No, well, I am saying that, but if you weigh on a weighing machine, the people using it to good effect and the people speaking against it, I suspect the users who are happy with it massively dominate, but the voices are dominated by the negative. So in fact, it's a complex judgment call whether we're really on this anti-AI binge or whether it's really fake, because the people that are happy with AI don't feel the need to evangelize it. They just use it.
But then what's the point of all your hysteria? It's almost like a weekly hysteria you have about everyone who's critical of AI. It doesn't really matter. I mean, before we went live, we were talking about Gary Marcus's arguments, and he's one of the leading critics of AI. You suggested that he's out of control. He's an old friend, been on the show many times. Maybe he is out of control, but you just don't have to read him. So what?
I think you can conclude that. You could nail me with why you're talking about champions when you say there isn't really a problem. I think that there is a different problem. That's why. The problem isn't negativity. The problem is lack of vocal connection between AI and people's futures. Vocal connection. So AI is missing an articulate group of people who together are reinforcing an understanding of the future that will make normal people happy that it's happening. I think it's missing that. I think anyone who examines it does draw those conclusions, but of course, in normal life, most people don't examine these things. They just live through them. So the editorial is trying to stake a claim of saying, okay, well, there are champions. They don't speak coherently or together, but here they are. Here's what they're all doing. Let's try to fill that gap. The gap that is the, I'd say, silence of the majority. So that the minority who are politicizing negativity can be exposed as a minority.
It's Nixon's, so you're reintroducing Nixon's silent majority. So this idea of champions, what does that mean? I mean, anyone who works for an AI company is by definition an AI champion. You don't include Amadai in this. You put Sam Altman. I don't want to get back in the Altman versus Amadai, OpenAI versus Anthropic argument, but isn't by definition anyone who works in the sector, and it's increasingly the sector, everything in Silicon Valley, everything in innovation is built around AI. They're championing AI, aren't they?
Well, I think the answer is not necessarily. They're very circumspect. There is a, you could call it nuance, but I don't think it's nuance. I think it's defensiveness. There's a circumspection and a defensiveness due to the belief that the negative ideas are strong and dominant, and people don't want to get on a bandwagon and go in the other direction fully. So they nuance everything to the point where they're really not making a point. Yes, on the margin. By the way, I left out Elon as well as Amadai, so I was fairly balanced with who I left out. I tried to pick the middle, the mainstream, if you will. And I do believe that if you are tactically running an AI company today, you've got this little voice in the back of your head saying, don't upset anybody and don't pretend it's safe, even if it is, because people don't believe it is. So it's almost like they're being trained as politicians as opposed to business leaders. Meanwhile, of course, they are running a business and doing very well, as you acknowledged. But that isn't ideal, is it? I mean, can you imagine any other major breakthrough in human history where people would be shy to champion it? It's kind of a strange feeling to me.
You, in the newsletter this week, you refer to a tweet by David Sachs, the former AI czar, Trump's AI czar, now kind of a conservative commentator, very critical of Amadai and Anthropic. I'm quoting the tweet. Dario believes frontier AI is too powerful to distribute. We believe it is too powerful to centralize. Dario appears to believe sincerely that safety and progress are best served by centralizing authority in a marriage of corporate and state power. The weight of human history gives us reason to fear that outcome. Now, I'm in Dario's camp. I don't want to have this argument again with you. I know you're not. But couldn't you at least acknowledge that you may not agree with Dario's conclusion, but he's championing, trying to champion something?
He's championing handcuffs on AI. He is championing, but it's handcuffs. State power, how could you interpret that other than handcuffs? And so he is basically saying, don't trust us, but if you are going to trust us, just trust me because I'm big and centralized. And that, if you look at Martin Varsavsky's post of the week this week, which is all about what you can do without centralized AI, and it's a lot, there are really two trends. You could think of it as a purely capitalist libertarian trend that doesn't want the state involved and believes people will get control over distributed intelligence through their own hardware at the edge. Varsavsky even says it could be done without the electricity grid. So imagine some, post-nuclear situation. As long as you've got a box and some solar power, you could have the world's intelligence in that box. It wouldn't have been destroyed, and it's there forever. So there's that libertarian trend which Varsavsky really embodies. And then there's the corporate state power trend, which Dario embodies. I think most people are somewhere in the middle. I'm in the middle. I don't mind large AI companies investing lots of money to deliver stuff at scale that would be very hard to deliver otherwise. I'm fine with that.
You know what they said about the middle, Keith, in Texas? The only thing in the middle of the road are squashed armadillos. So you really want to be squashed? You've got to take a position. Either you're in the Sachs camp or you're in the Amadai camp. My sense with you is, for all this fiddling around, you're in the Sachs camp. If you had to choose between the two.
I agree with Sachs. I'd say 90%. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're in his camp. You're not in the middle.
But I don't.
So why even talk about
camp.
being in the middle? You're a Sachs guy.
I don't think he has a camp. I think my book.
What do you mean he doesn't have a camp? Of course he does. I mean, for better or worse, he has a position.
He's not. He's just an individual. He has no followers. He has no movement. He doesn't represent.
Well, I don't mean his camp. I don't mean that Sachs has a camp itself, but that position, that general position that against the idea of centralizing authority and what he calls the marriage of corporate and state.
I don't agree with. That's the 10% I don't agree with. I'm completely happy, let me say it again, with centralized large AI companies like Anthropic and OpenAI. I'm totally happy. So that differentiates me from Sachs. I'm also totally happy that the edge is growing, which also differentiates me from Amadai. And I believe that the human outcome, or the dividend we'll get from this, is free intelligence that needs investment. And I don't believe that investment can come without large centralized corporations.
Jill Lepore argues that in the past, I mean, she's a historian, that the car industry, for example, she writes about in the AI versus the people. She has a new book on this, that required a degree of regulation. I mean, this is again a debate that's ongoing about whether or not innovative industries need to be regulated. What's your take? Do you agree with Lepore that AI isn't any different from the car industry, for example, that required a degree of regulation about how one can drive, laws for the road, that AI needs the same sort of stuff?
Yes and no. The no bit is that AI is just, corporations, and there are already regulations surrounding corporations, and there is nothing new needed to govern corporations. Every legal remedy needed for anyone who does anything illegal is already in place, and so the call for special regulation is not required. I don't think AI itself as a technology needs regulating. I don't think it's dangerous. I think it's safe. I think it's not only safe, it's fantastic for humans to use it, and they should use it more and more. And anything that slows that down is anti-progressive. So on the whole, I disagree with that. I do agree that in general, states need to regulate corporate behavior to stop illegality, and that's fine. And so, AI companies have to live within the law just like everybody else. But I think what is happening, and this is especially true in journalism and book publishing, is if you want to sell, you have to create a bandwagon. And the bandwagon around regulating AI, it's a fairly weak one.
So you're suggesting that Jill Lepore made that argument in order to sell a book or sell to publishers. I don't think she quite needs that. I mean, she's America's leading historian.
Well, historians usually don't comment on current opinion. So she's obviously not acting as an historian in this piece. She's acting as an opinion piece. And that opinion, AI versus the people, is fundamentally going to damage the left in America, by identifying against AI. I honestly think they will lose in 2028 if they stick to that idea, and quite heavily.
There was we didn't put it. I don't think you put it in the newsletter, but there was an interesting. Ezra Klein is probably has the most popular podcast show, certainly amongst progressives. He interviewed Helen Toner, who used to be on the OpenAI board. She was one of the people involved in the scandal when Altman was being pushed out. She talks about AIs already being out of control. The Hugging Face episode. You said they're completely safe. Are you not concerned at all about the Hugging Face incident, or the fact that AI seem, at least in the language of Toner's conversation with Klein, to be out of control?
Honestly, no. The Hugging Face incident was contrived in a lab to try to see how far AI would go in order to achieve a goal. And the only critical part of it could be that they didn't pay attention, so it took them a few days to figure out what was going on. But it was a laboratory experiment, and it wasn't very damaging, frankly. I mean, these AI tools, and now this is true even for normal individuals like Grokbot, can control browsers, login sessions to websites, your hard drive and the files on it. We are giving them access so they can achieve things for us. Like yesterday, I got a text from Grokbot at 2 saying, your calendar's telling you to drop off the car at the airport at 3:30, but your flight's at 4:11. So ignore that. You need to check it in by 2:30. And it knew that because it had access to my calendar, and it knew where I was on my GPS on my phone. So so we're opening ourselves up to AI having access to software and tools, and outside of the context of what's called a harness, you may have a fear that it's going to do things, but it doesn't have a consciousness where it has a plan. It only has the goals that you set for it. So if I said to the AI, I want you to delete my calendar, it would.
Yeah, you should listen to the Toner piece. You clearly haven't, but I mean, you weren't expected to
listen to what?
The Toner conversation with Klein. In your editorial, you say,
are you telling me I'm ignorant of something?
Well, I mean, you're dismissive rather than ignorant.
Well, I think I'm an expert that uses it, so I think they're the ones who are.
Well, Toner was on the OpenAI board. Now she runs a foundation. But anyway,
we all know how bad the OpenAI board was. It wasn't technical, Andrew. You shouldn't elevate people above their station.
Yeah.
Why do you do that? Do you think she has actually got technical chops and understands this stuff?
Well, she sounds certainly more intelligent than some other people I can think of.
Like me.
You say that intelligence needs to be metered, funded, built, distributed, and made cheap enough. We've talked about some of those. I'm curious about the metered element. We haven't talked much about Stripe on the show, but for you, and I'm curious what this means. Stripe, you see Stripe as a champion. They usually get pretty good press. You in the newsletter this week, you quoted, you linked to a piece by Alex Wilhelm on Stripe wanting to meter intelligence. What does that mean, Keith? Metering intelligence?
It's a little bit like metering bandwidth. When you sign up for AT&T, they send you a bill every month for the packets that you put down their pipes. Well, the AI companies, as we can all see, are having to invest crazily large amounts of money to build the ability to deliver access to intelligence as a shorthand of what they're delivering. And metering, it just means they need to get paid for the investment. Metering means you get charged according to your use. They're being fairly generous, to be honest, because they're giving us
Stripe or the providers, the
The
AI.
providers first. Stripe's just a payment
Yeah.
mechanism.
So Stripe can do that. I mean, I agree with you on this. I mean, when I use, and I brought this up last time, this hasn't happened again with me. I pay $100 a month for Anthropic, for Claude, but I'm not entirely clear what I can and can't use. I've never been throttled before, but last week I was, and I didn't really understand why. And there was no way for me to determine how much quote AI I was using. So is that what you mean by metering?
Yeah. In fact, there is a way, we won't explain it now because it's too convoluted, but you can log in on their website and you'll see your token usage and you'll see your quotas and what percentage are left in the day, the week, and the month. And that $100 buys you something. It's a specific amount. It's actually a very generous amount. They're losing money on you. So when they throttle you, you've really been using it. And at the moment, if they charged what they would have to charge to be profitable on you individually, you'd probably have to pay, $200 to $400 a month, maybe even more.
Yeah, and but even the internet. I mean, my Comcast, where I get my bandwidth from, I mean, I'm sure you can check it, but they don't make it very easy. It's still a hard thing to do.
It's a hard thing to do. And to be honest, these days, most of the metered plans on anything in the internet are a little bit like your mobile phone. It is a subscription that's hard to burst through. You can burst through them if you really try hard, but it's hard. So it's mostly flat pricing on a subscription. And that's what you and me pay for the AI companies.
So what I don't understand, you're saying though that we're getting good pricing, that all these companies are losing on us, but you're also saying that AI intelligence needs to be made cheap enough.
Yes.
So should they? I mean, I take your point on the metering, and certainly Stripe is a champion here, and I don't think anyone's going to argue with you on that. Although that's the nature of their business, so it doesn't require any sacrifice on their part. But how are we going to get this cheap enough, Keith? If these companies, OpenAI and Anthropic and SpaceX, are losing money on us?
So the OpenAI acquisition of OpenRouter is a good way of answering that question. OpenRouter is a software service in the cloud that has inside of it all of the open source models, including the closed source models. It's got all of the models. And what you do is you subscribe to OpenRouter instead of the underlying LLMs. And it will look at your prompts and it will route the prompt to the cheapest good answer. And so it's lowering the token use and the dollar per token use. And Stripe has acquired them. So it's got itself in the middle of the traffic stream for tokens.
So that's good. Yeah, because sometimes when I use Claude, it seems to default, for better or worse. I don't know whether this is their way of trying to get you to spend more money, but it defaults to the most sophisticated algorithm, which presumably requires the most horsepower.
Correct. So it, and that obviously is self-interest. All of them.
That's Amodei, Dario, that hypocrite.
No, they all do it. I wouldn't knock him especially on that, because they all do it, and that's what they should be doing, of course.
But I wonder. I mean, I take your point, and these things are always expensive until they're not. You have a piece by Azim Azhar, the London-based futurist, on the curious economics of a $6 AI agent. But I wonder whether it really makes any difference in terms of the anti-AI hysteria at the moment. It's not coming from people like you and I who use this all the time and are bothered by the fact that we're spending $100 a month, whereas we think we should really only be spending 75 or 50. Is bringing the price down going to dramatically change anything, do you think?
Well, I think the price over time will tend towards zero. I mean, the real question is, how much will it cost to deliver AI to 8 billion humans? And it isn't really 8 billion because you're very young children. And so let's say 6 billion. How much will that cost? And the answer might be, it's certainly trillions of dollars. It may be tens of trillions of dollars. But if these companies themselves are each worth 5 to 10 trillion ultimately, in the big picture over a long enough time, that becomes a meaningfully good investment. It does need to be maintained, so there'll be some ongoing costs, but it should be possible to get the price of AI down to zero for use cases that are, individual. And if you can get the price of AI down to zero for individuals, schools and so on, hospitals, that is a massive uplift to what we can achieve together as people. And I do think that is something.
But how are they going to get it down to zero if they're money-making businesses?
Well, it's not going to be zero for everybody. It's going to be zero for the lightest touch cases at the edge, meaning, a kid in school can do everything they need to do in school. That's a light touch. But a company that is running 3,000 agents, running all kinds of software infrastructure, they're going to have to pay for it. So it's really, how do you build out a business to business AI and a consumer AI with the end goal of free AI for most people at the edge of the network?
I think the real issue is getting people to even understand how it affects them. You talk about cheap enough to delivering a human dividend, whatever that means. But that dividend isn't clear to a lot of people. One of the most interesting pieces in this week's newsletter is the story of a dumpling shop that became or has become a poster child of AI adoption in China. Yeah. So tell me about this.
It's fantastic.
Dumpling shop. Why is this an example of how AI can become a human dividend, to use your language?
Well, so this is a store owner, small store, makes dumplings, delicious dumplings.
Well, we don't know if they're delicious. Have you been there?
Well, have you ever had a dumpling that wasn't delicious? They are delicious.
I have, actually.
So this guy decided that he'd get a lot more orders if he built software for the shop that would allow AI agents to place orders for their human owners. And so he built out a whole agent API for ordering dumplings. And he's now gone through the roof in terms of how many dumplings is selling, simply by recognizing that humans would rather get out of the way for trivial tasks. And if he made it possible for agents to do it, people would send their agents to do it, which they have. So it's kind of just a mini sign of how creative individuals in their own context are going to change their situation through using.
So it's a kind of like, it's the sort of story that we had in the early 90s about businesses or retail stores getting a website.
Yeah. Or even more like when they put it into a vending machine and you could order a can of Coke or something, which also happened in the late 90s. But yeah, it's leveraging what's there now to revolutionize a small business into a much bigger business. And anyone could do that with their business. I mean, you could do it with Keen On. I can do it with That Was the Week if I focused on that. We could all think of ways to use AI to multiply our capabilities in different dimensions.
Yeah, but again, I don't think anyone would disagree. Anyone who's used AI, and everyone's using it. I mean, as Dave McClure and Aman Verjee note, and you've said this many times, Keith, in the show. I mean, these are real businesses. This is not a repeat of the .com experience, because these companies all have revenue. So people are still using it, and presumably a lot of the people who are using it are still not crazy about big AI companies.
I'm starting to doubt that that's true. It definitely feels like received wisdom, and I will grant you that that appears to be where the world is going. I suspect we've reached a tipping point where more and more people are using it and are happy with it, and that minority voice is starting to sound a little cultish and a little, outside of normality.
So it's the weirdos who are against it, but they have the most noise. There was an interesting piece this morning, I don't think you got it in the newsletter, from the Journal, about how startup founders are working harder than ever to keep up with their agents. There are also going to be some founders, I think, who are just disillusioned or angry about being on this treadmill. Do you think, or not?
It's certainly possible. Look, you can't run AI agents without engaging with them pretty much constantly, daily at least, but probably several times a day. Because I experiment a lot, I'm running agents on OpenAI, Claude, and Grokbot. They kind of overlap, using the same skills, working on similar projects, and my productivity is gone through the roof, but my work with agents has replaced what I used to do. And so, yeah, you're kind of in a control. It's like being Captain Kirk on the Starship Enterprise, flying the thing. And I don't think agents really have reached the stage where that is an option. I think you have to engage with them at the cost of time, but with the benefit of productivity. I think that's so. I do think this is an accurate article of finger on the pulse of now. I don't know how we get past that yet. It's not clear to me that truly autonomous agents are in the near future. They can do automations that you pre-planned and agreed to, but kind of making things up and figuring things out without your intervention, not yet there.
Another piece this week in the Journal about how AI is plunging the book publishing industry into utter chaos. We've talked about this in the past, and yet Keith, you end the editorial this week, which focuses mostly on AI. I mean, you've got 2 essays and about 20 AI pieces. I don't know what's happened to all your essays, by noting that you're still working on the book. Your update, we've talked about your book before, is that you reduced this quote unquote book from 80,000 words to about 60,000. So how did you do that?
I went through it chapter by, it's actually good. I got an agent to create a 2-panel.
You didn't get a literary agent. You got an AI agent
to throw up a 2-panel, the view of the book, with giving me editing rights on the right-hand side. I literally went through every paragraph of every chapter and rewrote it, deleting repetitive stuff, getting rid of AI-isms if I found them. 70 chapters. It took me 3 days.
70 or 17 or 70?
17. It was a 3-day job. I did about 5-ish chapters a day. And by the end, it was a Keith Teare written book that was originally done.
So in other words, you wrote this book, and the book's called Who Owns Intelligence. You did it in a week?
I did the edit in a week. I wrote the book in about 2 days.
So do you think it's going to be a bigger seller than Jill Lepore's new book on AI?
I haven't decided whether I'm going to sell it yet. I might give it away. It might get more readers than her.
You think you'll have more readers than Jill Lepore?
I'm definitely going to do something with it. I mean, and what's your advice? I think the message that I'm trying to send is an important message, and I don't think it's said loudly enough yet. And I'd like to be able to make an impact getting heard on these topics.
Well, the message, and let's just repeat the message, and maybe we can end here. The book is called The Human Dividend. No, is it called The Human Dividend?
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Who owns intelligence?
That's
The
just
human dividend.
that's just the blurb. It's called the human dividend.
Okay, well, your conclusion at the end, at the moment at least, the book hasn't out yet. Intelligence is the central product of this era. Its surplus is co-produced. The property should be too. What's the property? What does that mean?
The property is referring, it's inside the book, so it is a bit convoluted, that sentence. Probably needs to be edited itself. The property is the equity of the AI companies that have harvested intelligence and are metering it back to us. The book argues for equity ownership modeled on better versions of the Alaska and Norwegian equity ownership program.
Public ownership, but not centralized public ownership.
Public ownership directly to individuals rather than through a state body. It's actually through I call it the Human Wealth Fund. It's a fund.
Is it like what Trump's doing? We're giving everyone $1,000 when they're born.
It's different to that because that state gives it, state can take it away. This is a fund, so it's just like you're buying shares yourself, except you don't buy them; they're given to you, one share each, and you own a piece of this entire AI infrastructure because of the unit of the fund that you own as an individual, and its lifetime goes away when you die, so there's no inheritance.
But who's making the laws here? It's the state, isn't it? Who's defining
No,
this?
it's a direct, the argument is, by the way, it doesn't exist. It's something I want to exist. The argument is the AI companies should set it up themselves. They should donate equity to it on day one. And it should be have its own constitution, just like a fund, and should be only regulated by its own rules.
And you're suggesting this is in their interest because otherwise they're going to get regulated by the state.
It's in their interest because they want people to have an affinity with their success. And the only way to really do that is that everyone is an owner, not just a user, an actual owner.
And when do you say the book? You're going to give the book away? Who owns intelligence?
I haven't decided. What would you do if you were me? Here's my options. Just put it out there as a PDF and distribute it for free. Link to it on every version of That Was the Week and blah, blah. The second is to chapterize it, put it into another Substack and release it week by week, chapter by chapter, either for free or paid. I'm against paid because I don't need to make money from this. I want the ideas out there.
Well, we'll have to see. Maybe give it a little bit more thought, Keith. We can talk about it in future weeks. That was the week for August the 22nd, 2026. Keith is calling for AI champions. He's certainly not going to get it on the football field. Manchester United lost to Hull today, Keith, right?
They lost and quite decisively.
So they're not going to be champions.
Yeah.
You needed to have the music. You'd have the Queen music of We Are the Champions, although you might have got sued for that.
But I did say who are the champions as opposed to we are the champions. So,
well, we will see. Certainly, neither Manchester United nor Spurs will be champions this year. We will see you. I think next week I'm actually at Yossi Vardi's Kinanet in Italy, so we might take a break, but we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Have a good